The sun had barely risen over the rolling fields of Ashford County when Ethan Carter was already at work. At 38 years old, Ethan's mornings always began the same way. Before most people had even opened their eyes, he was walking through endless rows of crops, inspecting irrigation systems, checking equipment, and greeting workers by name. The fresh scent of earth filled the cool morning air as golden sunlight slowly spread across Carter Farms, a place that was far more than a business to Ethan. It was home. It was legacy. It was family. "Ethan," shouted old Mr. Jenkins, one of the farm's longest-serving employees, "the new harvesting machines arrived an hour ago?" Ethan smiled warmly. "Great. I'll inspect them after breakfast." Mr. Jenkins shook his head with admiration. "You know, your father would be proud of what you've done here." Ethan looked across the vast farmland stretching toward the horizon. "I hope so," he said quietly. Years earlier, Carter Farms had been on the verge of collapse. When Ethan was only 22, his father, Robert Carter, suffered a severe heart attack that left him unable to work. Medical bills piled up, debts increased, and the family business began sinking rapidly. At that time, Ethan had been studying agricultural engineering at university. He had dreams of earning his degree, traveling the world, and eventually returning with new ideas to improve the farm. But life had other plans. Without hesitation, Ethan dropped out of university. His professors tried to convince him to stay. His friends told him he was making a mistake. Even his father had begged him not to sacrifice his future. But Ethan had made his decision. "Family comes first," he had said. From that day onward, he worked relentlessly. During the day, he managed crops and livestock. At night, he taught himself modern farming techniques through books and online courses. He often slept only 3 or 4 hours before starting again. Years passed. Slowly, the struggling farm transformed. Ethan introduced advanced irrigation systems, invested in modern machinery, and negotiated profitable contracts with major food suppliers. Every dollar he earned went back into expanding the business. While Ethan devoted himself to the farm, his younger brother Ryan enjoyed a very different lifestyle. Ryan loved expensive cars, luxury vacations, and glamorous parties. Although he officially held a position within the family company, he rarely showed up for work. "Ethan's handling everything," Ryan often joked to his friends. "Why should I stress?" Their younger sister Melissa was equally distant. After graduating from business school, she moved to the city to pursue her own ambitions. She visited only during holidays and family celebrations. Yet, despite their lack of involvement, Ethan never complained. Whenever Ryan needed money, Ethan provided it. When Melissa wanted financial support for her startup, Ethan invested without hesitation. He believed that helping family was simply what family members did. His mother often worried. One evening, as they sat together on the farmhouse porch watching the sunset, she gently placed her hand over his. "You give too much, Ethan." He smiled. "They're my brother and sister. That doesn't mean you must carry everyone forever." Ethan looked toward the fields. "Dad taught me that family takes care of each other. That's all I'm doing." His mother sighed softly. "Just make sure they would do the same for you." Ethan never answered. Deep down, he never doubted it. Years later, tragedy struck. Robert and Margaret Carter were returning home from a charity event when a drunk driver crossed into their lane. Neither survived. The entire town mourned. Hundreds attended the funeral. Standing beside his parents' graves, Ethan made a silent promise. "I will protect everything you built." And he did. Grief became motivation. Over the next decade, Ethan worked harder than ever. Under his leadership, Carter Farms expanded into Carter Agricultural Group, one of the region's most successful agricultural companies. The small family farm evolved into a multi-million-dollar enterprise with warehouses, distribution centers, and contracts across the country. Local newspapers celebrated Ethan as a visionary entrepreneur. Industry leaders sought his advice. Employees respected him not only as a businessman, but as a man of integrity. Yet success never changed him. He still ate lunch with workers. He still remembered employees' birthdays. He still lived in the same farmhouse where he had grown up. To Ethan, wealth meant little. Family meant everything. which was why he ensured Ryan and Melissa remained equal shareholders in the company, despite their limited contributions. Mom and Dad wanted us to share this together, Ethan would always say. Neither Ryan nor Melissa objected. They happily accepted annual profits worth millions. As the years passed, Ethan became increasingly optimistic about the future. He had recently become engaged to Claire Morgan, a compassionate schoolteacher who seemed to understand his dedication and values. For the first time in many years, Ethan allowed himself to dream beyond work. Marriage, children, a future filled with happiness. He believed the hardest years were behind him. He believed his sacrifices had finally paid off. Most importantly, he believed his family loved him as deeply as he loved them. He had no idea that the people he trusted most were already planning to take everything from him. And when betrayal finally came, it would shatter not only his career, but his heart. Rain hammered against the tall windows of the Carter mansion as Ethan Carter pulled his black SUV into the circular driveway. The weather matched the uneasy feeling that had settled in his stomach ever since his younger brother Ryan had called earlier that afternoon. "Brother, we need to discuss the company's future," Ryan had said. The words themselves had seemed harmless, yet something about Ryan's tone had troubled Ethan. It had been unusually formal, cold even. Ethan switched off the engine and sat silently for a moment, staring at the old family home. The mansion had once been filled with warmth. He could still picture his mother preparing Sunday dinners while his father laughed loudly at the head of the table. Family gatherings had once meant stories, laughter, and togetherness. And tonight, however, the house felt different. Empty, unwelcoming. Pushing aside his concerns, Ethan stepped out into the rain and hurried toward the front door. As soon as he entered, he noticed the silence. No music, no conversation, no welcoming smiles. Only the distant ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. "Ethan," Melissa's voice called from the dining room. "We're in here." Ethan removed his wet coat and walked toward the room. The sight waiting for him immediately made him uneasy. Ryan sat at one end of the long dining table, dressed in an expensive tailored suit. Melissa sat opposite him, perfectly composed, her expression unreadable. Beside them sat Richard Hale, the company's longtime attorney. Several thick folders lay neatly arranged on the polished wooden table. "Ethan," Richard said quietly. Ethan frowned. "Richard, what's going on?" No one answered immediately. Ryan gestured toward an empty chair. "Sit down." Ethan remained standing. "I'd rather know why I'm here first." Melissa exchanged a glance with Ryan. Finally, she spoke. "We've decided that Carter Agricultural Group needs new leadership." Ethan stared at her. "What are you talking about?" Ryan leaned back comfortably. "The company's grown beyond your capabilities." For a moment, Ethan simply blinked. Then he laughed softly. "Very funny." Neither sibling smiled. The laughter disappeared from Ethan's face. "You're serious." Melissa folded her hands neatly. "Very." Ethan looked from one face to another. "I don't understand." Ryan slid one of the folders across the table. "You will." Slowly, Ethan opened it. Inside were legal documents, corporate resolutions, and official notices. The first page made his blood run cold. Notice of removal. As chief executive officer, Ethan stared at the words. "This isn't possible." "It is," Melissa replied calmly. "We hold a majority vote." Ethan looked up sharply. "What majority vote?" "Our parents left equal ownership shares to all three of us," Ryan explained. "Melissa and I together control 66%. Ethan's confusion quickly turned to disbelief. "You've never even participated in company decisions." Melissa shrugged. "That's irrelevant." Ethan flipped through the pages frantically. Then he froze. Several documents carried what appeared to be his signature. His eyes widened. "What is this?" Ryan remained silent. Ethan held up the papers. "These signatures are fake." The room fell quiet. Ethan turned toward Richard. "You know they're fake." The attorney lowered his eyes. "Ethan." "You know!" Ethan shouted. Richard shifted uncomfortably. "The documents were submitted through proper channels." "Answer the question." Richard said nothing. That silence told Ethan everything. He slowly rose from his chair. You forged legal documents to remove me from my own company? Melissa's expression hardened. Your company? Ethan looked at her in shock. Excuse me? For years, Melissa said, you've acted as if everything belongs to you. I built this company. You managed it, she corrected coldly. The ownership belongs to all of us. Ethan could hardly believe what he was hearing. Managed it? He repeated. I sacrificed my education for this family. I spent 16 years working 18-hour days. I saved this business when it was drowning in debt. Ryan rolled his eyes. There you go again. What? The martyr routine. Ethan stared at his brother. The martyr routine? Ryan stood. We're tired of hearing how much you've sacrificed. Nobody asked you to do all that. The words struck Ethan harder than any physical blow. Nobody asked you. Memories flooded his mind. Dropping out of university, missing birthdays, working through illnesses, skipping vacations, giving Ryan money, financing Melissa's failed startup, sacrificing relationships, sacrificing dreams, all for family, and now this. You benefited from every sacrifice I made, Ethan said quietly. Ryan crossed his arms. And now it's our turn. Ethan looked toward Melissa. You support this? Absolutely. Why? For the first time, emotion appeared on Melissa's face. Because we're tired of living in your shadow. Ethan felt as though the ground beneath him had disappeared. This was never about the company, he whispered. Melissa said nothing. Deep inside, Ethan realized the painful truth. Years of resentment had been growing while he had been too busy protecting everyone to notice. Ryan spoke again. You have until Friday to vacate your office. Ethan stared at him. You're making a terrible mistake. Ryan smirked. No, brother. We're correcting one. Without another word, Ethan gathered the documents and walked toward the door. Just before leaving, he stopped. He turned slowly to face them. I hope the two of you never experience the pain you're causing tonight. Neither sibling responded. Ethan nodded sadly. Mom and Dad would be ashamed. Then he walked away. Outside, rain poured relentlessly from the dark sky. Ethan stood motionless beside his vehicle, clutching the folder tightly against his chest. For the first time in his life, he felt completely alone. The people he had trusted above everyone else had betrayed him. And deep inside, although he did not yet realize it, something had broken forever. The storm raging overhead was nothing compared to the one that had just begun in Ethan Carter's life. The betrayal at the family mansion was only the beginning. For Ethan Carter, the nightmare truly began the following Monday. As he drove toward the headquarters of Carter Agricultural Group, he still clung to a small thread of hope. Perhaps Ryan and Melissa had acted out of anger. Perhaps after a few days, they would realize the magnitude of what they had done. Maybe they could still sit down as a family and find a solution. After all, they were blood. Families argued. Families made mistakes. Families forgave. At least that was what Ethan had always believed. The towering glass building that housed Carter Agricultural Group came into view. For more than 15 years, Ethan had entered those doors every morning. Every brick, every office, every employee represented years of sacrifice and dedication. He parked his SUV in his usual executive parking spot and walked confidently toward the entrance. But something immediately felt wrong. Two uniformed security guards stood waiting near the front doors. Ethan, one of them said nervously as he approached. Morning, Daniel, Ethan replied with a tired smile. Everything all right? Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Sir, I'm afraid I can't let you inside. Ethan frowned. What are you talking about? The second guard stepped forward and handed Ethan an envelope. We've received instructions from the board. Ethan opened the envelope. Inside was a formal notice, informing him that his access privileges had been permanently revoked. His company identification card, office access, email accounts, and all digital credentials had been terminated, effective immediately. Ethan stared at the letter. This has to be some kind of mistake. Daniel looked genuinely distressed. I'm sorry, sir. Ethan looked through the glass doors toward the lobby. Employees moved about inside, many of them glancing nervously in his direction. Some quickly looked away, others simply lowered their heads. No one came outside. No one spoke. After a long silence, Ethan handed the letter back. I understand, he said quietly. He turned and walked away. Behind him, Daniel called out softly, Mr. Carter? Ethan stopped. Thank you, for everything you've done for all of us. Ethan forced a small smile. Then he left. By afternoon, the situation became even worse. News channels across the region began reporting shocking allegations against him. Former CEO of Carter. Agricultural group under investigation for financial misconduct. Millions missing from company accounts, board removes. Ethan Carter amid scandal. Ethan sat in stunned silence inside his farmhouse living room as reporters discussed accusations he had never imagined hearing. According to anonymous sources, Ethan had allegedly misused company funds for personal gain. The accusations were completely false, but they were convincing, painfully convincing. He immediately contacted the company's finance department. No one answered. He called board members. Voicemail. He called Richard Hale. No response. Then his phone began ringing continuously. Journalists, business associates, investors, lawyers. Everyone wanted answers. No one wanted to listen. Within hours, social media exploded with criticism. People who had once praised Ethan now questioned his integrity. Former business partners suspended negotiations. Several major clients announced they would review their contracts. Years of reputation collapsed in a single day. Late that evening, there was a knock at the farmhouse door. For a brief moment, Ethan felt hopeful. Maybe Ryan or Melissa had finally come to their senses. Instead, he found Claire Morgan standing outside. His fiancée, the woman he had planned to marry in just 4 months. Claire looked exhausted. Ethan, she said softly, come in. She stepped inside but remained near the doorway. Neither spoke for several seconds. Finally, Claire looked down. Please tell me the accusations aren't true. Ethan felt his heart sink. You think I stole from my own company? I'm asking you. Claire, you've known me for 7 years. Tears appeared in her eyes. Then why is everyone saying these things? Because someone is lying. Ryan showed me documents. Ethan froze. Ryan spoke to you? She nodded. He said you've changed, that you've been hiding financial problems for years. Ethan stared at her in disbelief. And you believed him? Claire hesitated. That hesitation shattered him. He slowly sat down. You actually believed him. Ethan, I don't know what to believe anymore. The room became painfully silent. For years, Claire had been the one person Ethan believed would always stand beside him. Now even she doubted him. I need time, Claire whispered. Ethan nodded slowly. I understand. But deep down, he knew. Some wounds never healed. Claire removed her engagement ring. Gently, she placed it on the kitchen table. I'm sorry. Then she walked away. Ethan remained seated long after the front door closed. The silence inside the farmhouse felt unbearable. Over the following weeks, events moved quickly. Authorities froze several of Ethan's personal accounts pending investigation. His assets became entangled in legal proceedings initiated by the company. Legal expenses mounted rapidly. Friends stopped calling. Invitations disappeared. People crossed streets to avoid him. The man once celebrated as Ashford County's most respected businessman had become an outcast. One evening, Ethan stood alone on the porch of the farmhouse. The setting sun cast long shadows across the fields he had spent most of his life protecting. Everything was gone. His company, his reputation, his future, his family, even the woman he loved. As darkness settled across the land, Ethan packed a few clothes, personal photographs, and his parents' old pocket watch into a worn travel bag. Just before midnight, he climbed into his aging pickup truck. He looked one final time at the farmhouse. Memories flooded his mind. Birthdays, Christmas celebrations, family dinners, dreams, promises, all reduced to ashes. With tears silently running down his face, Ethan started the engine. Without destination or plan, he drove away into the darkness. He believed he was leaving behind the ruins of his old life. He had no idea that fate was quietly guiding him toward a future far greater than anything he had ever lost. 3 months after leaving Ashford County, Ethan Carter was living in a small apartment in a neighboring city. He worked odd jobs during the day and spent his evenings alone, trying to rebuild his shattered life. One rainy evening, while eating dinner at a quiet roadside diner, Ethan noticed an elderly man struggling to carry several heavy boxes to his car. Without hesitation, Ethan rushed outside and helped him. "Thank you, young man," the elderly gentleman said warmly. "Most people simply walk by these days." "It's no trouble," Ethan replied with a smile. The man introduced himself as Samuel Whitmore. Over the next few weeks, the two men met regularly at the diner. They spoke for hours about business, life, leadership, and family. Samuel quickly recognized Ethan's intelligence, integrity, and experience. One evening, Samuel made an unexpected offer. "I own a company," Samuel said. "It's struggling, and I need someone honest to lead it." Ethan shook his head. "I appreciate your confidence, but my reputation has been destroyed." Samuel smiled knowingly. A man's true character is revealed during hardship, not success. Reluctantly, Ethan accepted. What Ethan didn't know was that Samuel Whitmore secretly owned one of the largest agricultural corporations in the country, Whitmore Global Industries. Within a year, Ethan transformed the company. Using the same dedication and innovation that had once saved Carter Farms, he doubled profits, expanded international partnerships, and restored Whitmore Global to unprecedented success. Meanwhile, back in Ashford County, Carter Agricultural Group was collapsing. Without Ethan's leadership, Ryan and Melissa made disastrous decisions. They wasted money on luxury lifestyles, ignored experienced employees, and signed reckless business deals. Major clients terminated contracts. Debt increased. Employees resigned. The once thriving company began crumbling. Then came the final blow. A government investigation uncovered evidence proving that financial records had been manipulated and Ethan's signatures had been forged. The truth was finally exposed. Ethan Carter had been innocent all along. Ryan and Melissa were arrested and charged with fraud, forgery, and corporate misconduct. News outlets across the country publicly cleared Ethan's name. The man once labeled a criminal was now celebrated as a victim of betrayal. 2 years after Ethan had left Ashford County, Whitmore Global Industries announced a major acquisition. The company had purchased Carter Agricultural Group. The irony stunned the entire business community. The company Ethan had built and been thrown out of now belonged to him once again. On the day ownership officially transferred, Ryan and Melissa requested a private meeting. For the first time in years, the three siblings sat across from each other. But everything had changed. Ryan looked exhausted. Melissa no longer carried the confidence she once had. "Ethan," Ryan began quietly, "we made terrible mistakes." Melissa lowered her eyes. "We're sorry." For several moments, Ethan remained silent. He remembered the night they had betrayed him. The lies, the humiliation, the loneliness, the years of pain. Finally, Ethan spoke. "You didn't just take my company, you destroyed my life." Neither sibling responded. Tears rolled down Melissa's face. "We know." Ryan swallowed hard. "Can you ever forgive us?" Ethan looked out the office window toward the fields beyond. "I've already forgiven you," he said softly. Both siblings looked up in surprise. "But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences." Ethan stood. "You'll both answer for your actions in court. That's something I cannot change." Ryan slowly nodded. Deep down, he knew they deserved it. As security escorted them from the building, Ethan felt something unexpected. Peace. For the first time in years, the anger was gone. Fate had delivered justice. Scene 6. A new legacy. Months later, Ethan stood beneath a bright summer sky outside the newly restored Carter Family Foundation. Instead of reclaiming the old mansion for himself, Ethan had transformed it into a charitable center supporting struggling farming families and providing scholarships to local students. A bronze plaque stood near the entrance. in loving memory of Robert and Margaret Carter. Samuel Whitmore stood beside him. Your parents would be proud, Samuel said. Ethan smiled. I hope so. Nearby children played in the gardens while local families attended the foundation's opening ceremony. Ethan had also found love again. Among the guests stood Emma Reynolds, a journalist who had investigated the truth behind Ethan's downfall and helped restore his reputation. Over time, friendship had blossomed into something deeper. As Emma joined him, Ethan looked across the property that had once represented pain and betrayal. Now it represented hope. Ethan finally understood something important. Revenge was not about destroying those who hurt you. It was about rebuilding yourself so completely that their betrayal no longer defined your life. And as the sun set over Ashford County, Ethan knew that the best chapter of his story was only just beginning.